I think it's the same as the church.
All right, we're
Well,
official.
with that, we're so excited all of you have joined us. We're going to dive right in because we've got a pretty hot topic today that we are pretty excited about. So, welcome back to AI in Ministry. This is ACS's monthly webinar where we're diving into all things AI. So, first and foremost, if this is your first time here, we want to go ahead and say welcome. We're glad you're here. And I'm also going to say we are probably going to use some words and some vernacular and probably some acronyms that maybe you have never heard of before. So things like LLM and model and multimodal and all kinds of fun stuff. So what I want to say is if at any moment you're feeling a little bit like, whoo, this is over my head, don't worry. You're not alone. It's because we've already done this webinar, or I should say, a series of webinars many times. So right out of the gate, we want to tell you all of the AI and ministry webinars are being captured on the innovation website for ACST called KingdomCreations.ai. And Courtney's going to drop a link in there. So if you want to grab that link for later, you can catch up on any webinar we've done. And this webinar will also be there in the next day or two. So with that said, this month's theme is we're doing an AI tool roundup. That's right. We're going to be sharing some of our favorite tools, not necessarily all of the tools in a particular category, but we're going to share some really fun tools with you guys today that we think can accelerate ministry. All right. So in the interest of introducing ourselves, my name is Chris Cahias, and for today's purposes, I will simply be the mayor of innovation in our Western theme. Next up, we are joined by Patrick Abernathy.
Hey, my name is Patrick Abernathy, and this is also my first time, but on this side of the camera, so go easy on me. Today, I'll be the distinguished engineer at ACS, and I joined the innovation team, Chris and Trace, at the end of last year. And just a quick shout out to my pup, Harley. So she snuck in.
Harley's with us in spirit, right? And my name is Trace Jackson. For today, my title is Innovation Wrangler, but that's my unofficial title every day because I have to wrangle Chris and Patrick and everyone who is innovation. So it's nice to have you guys here. We're super excited. So we're just gonna dive right in. And in honor of being in a roundup, we've chosen to adorn our avatars in Western wear and place ourselves in a saloon. Yeehaw! And to get this image, we used a tool that Patrick will be talking about later on in our presentation. All right, the first tool in our roundup is color creation. You guys, I use this at my own church. This is AI generated coloring pages for kids. You can search the entire library of coloring pages that have already been created. In fact, I pulled these images from the library. Or you can prompt AI to create your own. Now, this is very near and dear to my heart because this is our innovation team's app that we developed. I say we. The guys I wrangle were the ones that developed it. But we're super excited to make this available to you. And you can use this QR code to sign up. You can sign up now, but also don't worry, you guys. We are going to share this entire slide deck with you guys afterwards. So you can take your time. You're not going to lose out on any of these resources, and you can give your full attention to the presentation. And there is an entire webinar on color creation that you can watch the recording of. Just head to the Kingdom Creations site. Like Chris mentioned, if you want to go check that out, and Courtney pasted a link to that in the chat already. We hope you guys are blessed by using color creation. It's one of my favorite tools. Okay, another tool in our roundup that I also use quite frequently is Fathom. Fathom is a note taker that I bring to almost every single meeting that I'm in. In fact, I think it's here today. You get the regular old note taker stuff from it, like these bullets that you see here. But those blue buttons that you see near the top, those are the ones I focus on because during meetings, I can hit that bookmark icon or the task icon. And then when I go back to review my meeting recording and notes, those bookmarks and tasks are like literally embedded into the timestamp of the recording. So if I want, I could just rewatch just that little snippet of the meeting to remind myself what it was that I wanted to come back to or remember. Okay, but the real magic is the AI component, which includes AI generated summaries of the meetings. It'll pull out the purpose of the meeting, takeaways, topics, and it does a really good job of capturing them. You can also ask Fathom any question that you want about a meeting. For instance, here, if you can't read it, I asked Fathom if there were any decisions made during the meeting, and it pulled out 4 of them, and then gave me links to the part of the meeting recording that it pulled it from. And then possibly my top favorite is it'll generate action items from the meetings. Now, as I mentioned, I always use that little task icon to manually record where we talked about something I need to follow up on. Fathom's AI generated action items has 100% of the time created those tasks for me too. I still do it manually because I can type in any reminder I want, but it's great to know that Fathom totally has my back, always picks up on those tasks as well, and then some. It will usually end up presenting me with some action items I failed to capture or forgot about, or maybe just didn't want to deal with. Just kidding. I'm kidding, Chris. I love my job. Anyway, it's super helpful, but you guys imagine a tool like this, taking notes at an elder meeting or with your volunteers, generating the meeting minutes, accurately capturing decisions, or the next steps that you need to take in ministry. Okay, Patrick, you've got the next tool.
Yeah, so this is actually one of the applications or the AI that I use almost on a completely daily basis. We actually found this back when Color Creation was started, and Chris went, "Hey, I want to create a new website," and we got 2 weeks to do it. So this definitely falls under, work smarter, work harder. Work smarter, not harder. And the fun thing about Cody is as you're actually programming, it actually knows everything you're doing, where you're doing it. And so it's a super helpful tool. In a lot of ways that we suggest, or, some other cool use cases is imagine that you're trying to create a website. Well, you don't really need to do a lot of the back end work or know how to set up a lot because it's all about getting things stood up, using the tools to get a product out there faster. Or some suggestions I had the other day was someone was like, "I need a new UI for this." It's like, well, let me show you Cody. And it's just like, "Hey, let me put this in here." And it's like, "Oh, you want to change these buttons around? Well, let's just ask Cody how to do it." Or, Trace comes to you and says, "I don't like this pink anymore. I want it all completely different in 2 days." So, yeah, Cody, thank you. But I will also always plug is anytime you use AI and you put something out there in the real world, please double check your code. So I'm just going to put that blurb.
Yeah, good reminder. Okay, next tool. Oh, I love this one. This is a Notebook LM. Okay, we mentioned color creation already. Here's what I did with Notebook LM. Over on the left, you can see the sources. I fed it a few sources. One was the color creation webinar that I've already mentioned. Pop that in there. Gave it a few other documents. And then on the right, I asked it to create a podcast of 2 people talking about color creation. Check this out.
It never seems to end right. You talk to folks working in churches, and one thing that always pops up, especially for smaller congregations, it's how to keep the kids engaged, like really engaged, when you don't have a ton of resources or volunteers making those lessons really vibrant, the ones that stick with them.
It's hard.
It can feel impossible.
It is a huge challenge.
So one of the powerful things with this, so Trace did this with Color Creations. I actually did this about a week ago. I took the transcription from my pastor's sermon, loaded the transcript in, and it generated about a 16-minute podcast where 2 voices went back and forth talking about the main points of the sermon. And while some of you are thinking, that's interesting, but I don't know how I'm going to use that in my church, I fully concur. I agree with you. But we're bringing you cool tools. What I want to share with you is maybe you've got some staff, maybe some of your youth are struggling because they're not strong readers. They don't read well. This is an amazing tool. College kids around the country are using it. They're loading their notes in, they're loading things in because the younger generations have grown up in this podcast style, hearing to learn way. So what I want to challenge all of you is this is an amazing tool to play with. I don't know how God's going to use it yet in our churches. My pastors at my church and I actually, it's interesting, but we're not ready to use it yet. But the amazing thing is it built that podcast from just the source. Trace had to create no script, no anything, and it created two voices going back and forth. So this is one of those tools I want to say we're going to keep our eye on, and I have full faith that God is going to give us some powerful ways to use this in the future. But until then, it's worth checking out.
Yeah, so one thing when I was invited to join this the webinar on this side was Chris was like, "You have an avatar, right?" And I was like, "Oh, no." So I didn't catch that part in the job description. But what I did do is I spun up ChatGPT using the new 4.0 model. And I also had the unfortunate that I am behind the camera 95% of the time, so I get a rare selfie. So the other week we were actually at the Charleston Battery soccer game. So as you can see, it was a little cold out there, so I went ahead and grabbed that image, put it in ChatGPT, and said, "Hey, let's just make this into an avatar." And then I forgot, I don't need this avatar shouldn't have a background, so I asked it one more time to take that out, and then it gave me hair. So yeah, as y'all can notice, it was a little off on that, so I had to try one more time. So, and there you go. I ended up with an avatar. So.
It looks great. Looks just like you, Patrick.
It's a little shinier than mine today. But and as y'all introduced Harley earlier today, I was like, oh, well, she needs an avatar too. So come on, let's give her an avatar. So I went ahead and spun her up in ChatGPT as well. And she ended up doing very good. So she complained about the image because she was having a super bad hair day, but I think it turned out all right. One thing I did want to point out, though, that the whole point of this was the consistent character. So something with ChatGPT is I was able to take an image. So this is using something called image to image, and it is something that has just not been very good in the past. And Crystal actually pointed out a little bit, but then there's Sora, and I can actually take images and start merging them. And you notice they're not losing anything. So they're just expanding on the idea without drastically changing the image. And the image y'all saw earlier with us doing the roundup, sitting around, we used the exact same thing. So you'll notice all our avatars are still the same way we put them, just, with fancier hats today.
So if images are a thing and being able to create these images with AI are a thing, well, what about video? And what I want to show you guys, and again, this is going to be more of an inspirational moment than a go out and do it. But I want to introduce you to a model called Runway. So Runway is building video, both from real imagery, but also mixing real imagery with AI generated imagery. So we're going to give you about 20 seconds, just a quick preview of this video, and then I'll play a little more. It's pretty wild. So this video, for instance, was completely AI generated. None of those images you just saw are actual people. They are completely AI. And what we're sharing this with you is to say, imagine something like that. Maybe we're not AI generating all the imagery, but maybe we're taking and we're going to start a series where we're talking about something like real testimonies. This is powerful stuff. So being able to take an array of actual imagery, stitch it together in video in hours, not days, this can be a real accelerant for the church. So again, on our list of very cool tools and technologies, but with a lot of future potential for the church. I don't expect everybody to dive into that one, but it's very interesting to get out, hit YouTube, hit other things, take a look at Runway. And there are other video models, Kling, Sora, others that are out there. And the imagery that they are producing today is just mind-blowing. All right,
On the
Trace.
topic of imagery, not necessarily video, I wanted to talk a little bit about Photoshop. It's got some great AI features built in. For instance, it will generate content. So this is a picture of my pastor being commissioned. Unfortunately, his lovely wife's head was in the frame, so you can see her down at the bottom corner of the screen. I just selected her head. I told AI to generate the rest of this elder's legs, his feet, and the rest of the carpeted steps and the stage wall. So voila, Now Elder Rick has shoes. Now AI did struggle a little bit with the stairs there and the edge of the stage, but once I cropped it, really no one was the wiser. You can also use Photoshop's remove background tool. So here is my husband John and me. I had Photoshop remove the background altogether, and then I told it to generate content by telling it to place us in Tiananmen Square. Now, I did actually have to tell it further that I wanted the sun to be in the top left corner because that's where the sun was shining on our hats in the original picture, so it looked a little more seamless. But I think it did a pretty good job. And then for funsies, I had it place us on the North Pole amongst a colony of penguins. Why not? Now, another Photoshop AI feature that I use regularly is to fill in something that is content aware. So here's a wonderful picture that my friend took of me running in this gorgeous mountain scene. But her dogs were in the picture. They're not even my dogs. So I selected the dogs and I told Photoshop to replace them with more of the scenery that was already there. So it's aware of the content and just filling in that gap accordingly. And the really cool thing, you guys, is you may not have a photographer on staff. You may not have a professional designer. And the great news is now that you don't have to. Using these AI tools means you don't need a perfect picture, because now you have AI tools to help make the picture perfect.
Love, love, love that play on words. All right, so I'm going to talk to you guys about Sora. Sora has only been out a very short time. This is the latest image generation tool, and so everything that you've seen us do today, from creating Patrick's avatar to me creating an image of all three of us with added on cowboy hats sitting in a saloon, all generated by Sora. Now, you don't need a license, so I want to go ahead and get this out of the way right out up front. You get, it's either 3 or 6. I think it's 6 images a day for free by visiting chatgpt.com. You just have to make sure that you choose the 4.0 model. So under the hood, 4.0 is using Sora to create imagery. Now, before we get into all the fun stuff that's there that is really interesting, I want to show this. The image you're seeing on screen, this infographic of how to prepare the perfect cup of matcha, which I've got to be honest, sounds amazing at this moment in time, it was completely generated by Sora, including the text. So this was a single creation of Sora, and this is the thing that is rocking the world of generative AI, is its ability to create text. So I have built a couple of infographics myself using Sora already, and it's simply amazing because by using GPT-4o, it's combining not just its vast ability to create text, but now with Sora, it's using a multimodal approach where one engine's creating text, the other engine is creating the imagery, and a third engine is actually validating it. So you get some really cool contextually aware things here. The water is never boiling. As a matcha fan, classically, you don't just stir it. You stir it in an M or a W method so that you get a little froth going on. So super powerful. Like this, as Patrick said, we can also do consistent character or image to image. So meet Bo. Bo is our mascot that we're using at a bunch of shows and other things. And Bo is Bo the sheep. And there's a huge story behind Bo that we have no time to cover today, but it's amazing. So at a later date, we'll cover more of Bo's story. But I wanted Bo to be in a video. So I needed Bo to be on a background. So I asked Sora, put Bo in a high-tech background. So as you see, it did a phenomenal job of keeping Bo consistent. Now, if you're nitpicky like me, there's some shading, things in his ears look a little bit different, but unless you're looking for what's different, it's subtle enough that it doesn't matter. So think of how we could use this in the church, okay? Maybe you've got children's ministry, and maybe it's not Bo the sheep, maybe it's Bob the builder. I know I'm showing my age a little bit, but you could be placing him in different scenes using AI every week to create more depth and intrigue, because heaven knows these children who grew up with nothing but iPhones are, sock puppets and felt characters just aren't cutting it these days. Lastly, for your pastors out there, I don't know if your pastors do this. My senior pastor will call me occasionally and he says, Chris, I need a map. So this is Greece, if you don't recognize it. And I basically used It was either Google Earth or Google Maps. And I just turned everything off, all the layers. Don't show me cities or boundaries. I just want geography and an ocean. But what he wanted an ancient looking map that we could show Paul's journey from Athens to, sorry, I'm blanking, Athens to Corinth. So by combining getting the base map from something like Google Maps, stripping it down, passing it to Sora, I was able to, in 60 seconds, generate these 4 maps. And I'm pretty sure he used the bottom right one. And all we did is have a graphic designer put a little dot for Athens and a little dot for Corinth. So again, very powerful tools that take us forward. All right, we're going to transition into something that we want to spend some time with you on, and that is a tool called Boodlebox. We've covered it in the past, but again, in our Tools Roundup way of approaching today, we're going to rapid fire through some things with you guys, and you're going to actually see the prompts that we've used and how we used Boodle. I want to share, we'll share more at the end, but we have partnered with Boodlebox, and we've got a code and a QR code for you at the end where you can get 1 month for free to Boodlebox. Now, what makes Boodle amazing? Almost every one of the models we've talked about today is going to cost you at least $20 a month, okay, per tool. With Boodlebox, you're going to get most of the tools we've seen, not the video, not Sora, but all of the ChatGPT and Claude and more, some other image generators, Flux and Ideogram, for one price that's less than that, because we've worked diligently with them to bring ministry appropriate pricing to Boodlebox. I'll tell you more about that at the end. But with that, let's dive right into Boodlebox.
Yeah, so one big use we have for Boodlebox is we found out with all my nieces and nephews that we sometimes forget to buy birthday cards. And the first time I used it, we had to leave the house in like 5 minutes. So Violet, who is my little niece, she just turned 5, really loves dinosaurs and cupcakes. So happy birthday, Violet. You got a custom made card. And then using Flux, invitations sent out to my nephew Lucas. He loves monster trucks, and of course, all little boys love explosions. And for all the soccer players out there. But if you think about it, cost-wise, $5 a birthday card, you just paid for Boodle right there anyways.
Saving money. All right, so here's one way that I have used Boodlebox for actual, because I am the communications director at my church. So I pulled up Claude within Boodlebox and prompted it to write policies and procedures for the communications department. And I specifically said that they should include the typical policies and procedures that any communications department would need, but should also include following Christian principles and godly manner in everything that the department does. It generated an incredible amount of content for me. You don't see it all here. But just as a reminder, you always want to review and likely tweak AI generated content. But as you can see, Claude gave me a great launching pad to work with, even tossed in a mission statement and core values. And look here, all of the typical communications things that you would expect. And then here's a great portion all around spiritual guidelines, even some ideas at the bottom here on training and development. So it's a great use of Claude with respect to my church staff role in the documentation that I might need there. I also use Claude in my ministry with youth. So I was leading a talk one evening. I already knew what scriptures that I wanted to speak from, so I posted them in. I asked Claude, using these scriptures for references, pull out some main points, illustrations, and ideas for personal stories on how to present these scriptures to teenagers. And it gave me some good starting points. I really liked, there was one tip in there, you probably can't read it, but it gave me an idea on how to connect the lesson to their daily lives by discussing how these youth can be the boy with the lunch in their school or community. So then I asked, hey, well, what are some real life examples on how teens can be the boy with the lunch? And again, some more really great ideas. I also knew I wanted to use movie clips to kind of help make memorable illustrations for the kids. So I had Claude give me ideas of movie clips for each separate point that I wanted to make. Now, Claude didn't give me everything that I needed. I used other resources too, but it saved me a ton of research time in at least like putting those basics together and helping me find like supporting materials and visual aids that I was after. I also turned to Boodlebox for a lot of my supplemental material on sermons in my role as communications director. Now, in my experience, I did kind of talk a little bit earlier about Claude, but here I'm using ChatGPT because I have found that ChatGPT does the best job of providing like social media posts. And I don't know if you can see, it even gives me like little emojis and stuff. So I'll usually ask ChatGPT for a week's worth of posts on a particular topic or a scripture. And then in the same conversation, I'll turn to Flux to generate some kind of an accompanying image. So in this example, I really only used ChatGPT's concept to help me fashion my own verbiage for the post, but I used the image that it provided, knowing that I didn't have to worry about copyright or purchasing an image or anything. And this is a direct screenshot from my church's Facebook page. Now, in this example, I used Flux to help me generate the background of a sermon series brand that I was going after. We were getting ready to study the book of Ruth. So I asked Flux to create a background of cascading hearts. And it was okay, but not exactly the look that I was after. So I told it to try again, this time with more hearts, and I wanted them cartoony looking. And it got closer, but still not exactly what I wanted. So I told it to try again, and I wanted more hearts and make them very light color of pink instead of red. And that was it. And then I popped that into Photoshop, added some text, and voila, our series had a brand. Now here, I ended up pitting ideogram and Flux against each other. And sometimes you just have to experience. So first I turned to Flux. I asked for a watercolor background with a lot of white space, but it just wasn't at all what I had in mind. So I asked ideogram for the exact same thing. And now I had what I wanted. Took that image, popped it into Photoshop, tilted it a bit, and then I had an announcement slide. Now, I use Boodle for all aspects of my life, not just church or ministry or work. I wanted to do a New Year's post for my running club, but I didn't want to purchase an image. So I turned to Flux to create an image of a sport watch with 2025 on the watch face. It did not handle the numbers on the watch well at all. And I thought maybe even a watch concept might be too hard for AI in general. So then I opted for an image of a runner at the starting line of 2025. It was still on the struggle bus with the numbers of the year. So pivot. How about just show me a runner's feet hitting the ground? Now you're talking, and we've got a New Year's post for my running club's Facebook page. So sometimes AI can totally botch things, and you just learn how to ask, either ask for things differently or ask for different things. Now, this was at the beginning of the year. I wanted something for New Year's, but as Chris already mentioned with the matcha ideogram or
Sora.
Yeah, sorry. He used Sora, and Sora totally nailed the words. So, I mean, you can already see how much AI has advanced since just the beginning of the year. And maybe if one tool isn't cutting it, shoot for another tool. Oh, okay. This was a fun story. Chris had resumes of 2 developers, and he asked Patrick and me to review them and provide some feedback. Well, I am not a developer. I know zero about developers' experience or credentials. And reading their resumes, I just assumed would feel a lot like trying to feel my way through a Braille book. So I thought, well, Boodle. And so I uploaded both resumes into the Boodle, which is another great thing. You can actually upload different source documents. And I asked Claude, we're hiring a part-time developer. Out of the 2 resumes, which candidates may perform better? And I shared this chat with Chris. And the fun fact is we ended up hiring the guy who AI recommended. Now, I do want to mention Chris did still do his due diligence. He reviewed the resumes himself, but he was impressed that Claude knew what it was talking about. So sometimes AI totally comes through.
Well, I mean, that's what I told her at least.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I'm just kidding. But on a serious note, this is one of the neatest features of working with these large language models is their ability to do textual analysis. So as a human being, your brain is incapable of doing comparative analysis while you're reading, specifically between multiple documents. So most of you probably have had this before. If you've got 5 documents to read, You're going to read all of them once. Then you're going to start reading them again, probably with a highlighter and colored pens and pencils. And AI has the ability to do textual analysis on the fly in a way that we will never be able to do. And by the way, that's not a ding on being human. It's just how God made us. But he also gave us the ability to make things like this. So the cool thing here is it was able to not only give us the differences and recommend one based on resumes. And by the way, we all know resumes don't equal reality. Some people are great on paper and horrible in person, and some people are horrible on paper and great in person. But think of it like this. It was able to help us narrow the field quickly. And what Trace doesn't have a screenshot to show you is I went in later and said, all right, based on the differences between these two candidates, give me 5 questions to ask both candidates and 5 questions that are unique to each candidate so that we can narrow down who we're hiring. I've also had a church, my church actually do this. They just hired a new children's director, and my executive pastor, he did not believe me. We were having lunch one day and I said, oh, we totally did this. And he's like, oh, it's going to completely get it wrong. And he actually had said, we've already picked our person. I said, great, let's go see what AI thinks. And by the end of it, and then he's like, oh, this is going to introduce bias. I said, well, then let's play a game. You use the AI tool, you let your HR team do it the old-fashioned way, and let's see the answer that comes out. And in that moment, in that case, they both arrived at the same decision. The difference was he got there in 6 minutes, they got there in 3 weeks. One is not better than the other. It's just another tool in the toolbox.
All right, this one's you, Chris.
Oh, see, I got talking and got myself off track. All right, let's talk about some other fun tools. Again, within Boodle, you've got all of these different tools. And forgive me, we call it Boodle, we call it Boodle Box. The company's called Boodle, the software's called Boodle Box. I hate it when they do that because it gets us all confused. It's kind of like ACS Technologies and Ministry Platform and all the other things. But at any rate, so Perplexity is another powerful tool in your arsenal in the Boodle Box environment. It does research for you, okay? So you can literally ask it a question, and unlike something like, well, I can't say this about ChatGPT anymore. If you used ChatGPT 6 months ago, it couldn't talk to the internet. It couldn't talk to the live web. They've changed that. But the first one that did that was Perplexity. Perplexity can query the actual live internet and do research. It can go create summaries, find data. So one of the things that we've had to do here is I basically last night said, find trending Christian news or upcoming local events. I'm going to tell you right now, completely didn't do that great on local events, with the exception of the astronauts' faith in space, because I live in Florida on the Space Coast. But as it started doing, here are some of the trending things. Number 4 caught my attention. So apparently Mel Gibson is set to begin filming The Resurrection of the Christ, a sequel to Passion of the Christ, in Italy starting in August. Now, I don't know if that's news to everybody else because I don't watch TV, but that was news to me. So next I'm like, I want to know more about that one. So tell me more about number 4. So first it got a little confused. It wanted to tell me about ChatGPT 4.0 for a second. Then it's like, oh, but I can also tell you about Mel Gibson's Resurrection of the Christ. So it gave me a little bit more of the details. Again, it's mining it from the website. Now, we're about to talk about one of Boodlebox's superpowers. If you were out on the regular web and all you were doing was using these tools in isolation, you'd have to copy and paste and do this. So a chatbot's memory is something called a context window. We're not going to get into the technical details of it, but let's just say it has a pretty good short-term memory. So instead of me having to go to another tool and start over, I switched from Perplexity to Claude, and I simply said, how could I potentially start generating excitement for Mel Gibson's new movie? Now notice, I did not give it any more context, but everything we've been talking about in this chat window and run, it's all there in context. So now I know sometimes when people are getting started, they get confused, like, oh, how do I prompt? How do I learn to prompt? I don't want to be a prompt engineer, but I want to use AI. Another one of the things, and they just released this in the last 3 or 4 weeks, So if you look at the bottom there, you see it says Claude 3.5 Sonnet Intro. So Intro is a helper version of Claude where it's going to ask you more questions so that under the hood, it's developing its own kind of super prompt for you. So in this case, I said, how can I potentially start generating excitement? Let me ask you a few questions. Are you looking to generate excitement as a fan? Or are you a pro? What kind of audience? What kind of platforms? So next, I answered those questions and I said, as a fan and leader in a church, I want to start getting my congregation excited about the movie. So then it says, thank you for clarifying that, but it still doesn't know enough. How large is your congregation? Does your church have any existing small groups or Bible studies? So of course I answered, I said, we're about 2,000 on a weekend and 30 small groups meeting every other week. So with that, it starts giving me a strategy to build excitement about resurrection of Christ by doing small group studies, how it could possibly be integrated into the main service, and even going into some digital engagement from social media and my website. So this is one of the tools that's on Boodlebox to help people get started with prompting, is Claude 3.5 Sonnet Intro. They also have a custom prompt bot that they've built, which will help you use any of the models. So you're like, how do I create an image? Well, what kind of image? What are you going to use it for? How do you want to do these things? So some pretty cool tools to take you deeper and farther inside of Boodlebox.
So this is one that's come into play for us a lot here. So my oldest son's now, he's about to go into 8th grade, so they're getting into algebra. And I don't know how many of you've noticed, but apparently math is not math anymore. So I was like, what happened to the days of 2 + 2 = 4? I'm going to pick fun at Common Core. So, and my kids like to point out that, since we were born, or at least I was in the late 1900s, I can't possibly understand what they're going through. But anyway, so I go out to Boodle and it's just like, using their normal, using the school's new methodologies, how do I help my son go through math and how to understand algebra? How do I explain it to him? So, I have to also teach myself. So ChatGPT, not only am I using it as a tool to teach my son how to go through the steps, but, I'm kind of catching up with them too, because the methodologies that I use don't have any relation anymore to the way the new tools that they're, sorry, I air quoted that one, new tools they're using this day in schools. So Chat GPT. So, and one of the fun things too is once we go through it and see how they derive the answer, we can pull another problem up and say, well, how do I get to it? But don't give me the answer. Let's just work through it. So at this point, me and my son are actually working through these problems together. So, and the rest of this is just trying to teach my son where he's at. And so I can actually go with Chat GPT and say, hey, he's an 8th grader. He's just learning algebra, help us understand where he is. And a lot of the stuff I'm really learning with AI as I'm using it more is, age appropriate things. It's just like, I'm 13. So how can I help explain this to my son's 13. So how can I help explain this to him? And because sometimes AI, we've all seen it, uses really fancy words that I don't need my son to have to go look up to understand what I'm saying. So, it does a very good job of conceptually bringing it down to the level that, of the audience.
Awesome. All right, we're going to leave you with a kind of a fun one. It's more for, I'd say, use at home, but I think our children's ministry directors out there, this will make them excited as well. So one of the other models that's a little bit newer in the Boodlebox collection is from a company called Inflection, and it's called Pi. Now, what makes Pi different is it is an actually emotional, emotive LLM. It understands emotion. I think in a future podcast, a future webinar, we might have a moment where we could actually create some back and forth conversation with it, because it actually understands mood and can respond in kind or respond differently. But for today, I wanted to do a fun one. One of my best friends in the AI industry, he does this with his daughter. And we've done that with a lot of the other, and I've done it too with my children in the past. But you've all been there. If your parents you've got, in my case, I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old freaking out in the back seat because we weren't quite home yet. And they needed to understand, they wanted a story. They're like, we don't know what's going on. We want a story. So in that moment, I'm going to say, all God hits me with, okay, we're creating 3 new characters. They're little aliens from another planet, and their names are Beep, Bop, and Burp. Okay. So for the next year, every night, I am trying to create a new Beep, Bop, and Burp story, and I'll let you guess which one of the characters was their favorite. Hint, it wasn't Beep and it wasn't Bop. So we had a lot of fun with this. My wife recorded some of them. It's really good. It's fun. It's creative. But what I'll also say is, one, God doesn't always come through in that moment when I need a really crazy story. But number two, we now have the ability to use things like the generative AI and the large language models to create this. So in an effort to kind of jumpstart us today, I'm using Pi to create a bedtime story series involving a young girl whose name is Sophia. And in this case, she always speaks in a heightened tone and very quickly. So we've kind of made her a little bit, a little jittery. She's from a make-believe land called Whimsywood Hollow. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. You guys can get in here and dig around with it later. But what we did is we introduced the very first one. We described the place. But again, I'm going to keep going back to this so you guys know this. It being a multi-model solution, I went from episode 1 of our story to an image by simply switching from Pi to Flux. So there we go. We've got a very one shot. And by the way, I did nothing. Read what I wrote there. Create a photo of this. I didn't tell it what to do because it already knew the full scope of what we were talking about with this story. So it just created a photo of this. Now, here's what's awesome. The next day, the next night, whenever you're going to continue the story, you open this chat thread up, and all I'm writing is write the next episode where Sophia meets a new friend who is a unicorn named Uni. And the story continues. So again, my children are now in their teenage years, so I show them this and like, that's cool and lame, Dad. But little kids, this is an amazing thing. But here's what's really cool about this. And I've done this, my wife is actually children's ministry. And what I shared with her is, but you can do more. If we had started by telling it we wanted it to include that every episode involved a tenet of the Christian faith, that there is a bit of an opposition and a biblical lesson to be learned, we could be building and crafting these stories rather quickly through those. All right, so we're going to wrap up with the Boodlebox bit, and then we're going to get to some questions in a minute. But Boodlebox, QR code, if you want to try it out, please make sure you write down ACST free. What I want to share with you is my brain is a little fuzzy, but I will say it's less than, I want to say it's $16 a month for all of the Boodlebox tools. You guys can scan that QR code and get in, and then obviously we can connect with people if you want to keep it beyond the 1 month, but we want to encourage you, dive in, try it for a month. They also offer, if you're a slightly bigger organization, like if there's going to be 3, 4, 5, 10 of you that want to use it, they offer what they call a usage-based pricing model. And I'm going to share with you guys, I personally, I won't say I fought, but I cajoled the CEO, because they do this for their higher education people. They will offer the higher ed community, okay, if you say you're going to buy 5 licenses, we charge you the first month up front, but then you only get charged if each of those 5 people is using it in any given month. So if you're worried about deploying a new tool that you're not 100% sure if everyone's going to use, because we all know some of your pastors who teach very infrequently, they probably aren't going to use it. Like, and I mean this in all my heart. Some of my pastors at my church, they won't even use it except when they're getting ready to teach and they're brainstorming. So this is a great risk-free way for you as a church to start dipping your toe into the wonderful world of generative AI without, it breaking the bank. So with that, we'd love to tell you more. We've got a couple other things we want to share real fast. There were some honorable mentions, some other tools that we think are cool. comfy UI. It's a little bit technical, but it's pretty cool. Obviously, Olama is one of the language engines, and it is part of Boodle. We didn't show it because, frankly, I don't think any of us use it. Our preference, and one of the things you'll discover about a lot of these models is there isn't always a right or a wrong one. There's a preference. So, as Trace said, she likes ChatGPT for some things and Claude for the others. And with that, let's get to some questions.
Yeah, I did just kind of pop us straight through. Again, you will get a copy of this slide deck. So you'll see those honorable mentions. You can look into them if you like. You'll also have that QR code for signing up with Boodle if you didn't do it already. We absolutely love it, as you can tell. We do have a few more minutes. So Courtney, do we have some questions?
We sure do. We sure do. I just want to make everybody aware that you can see all of these recordings. Somebody did ask in there, and I messaged them back in the chat, but this is being recorded and you can find all of the recordings. And I did put the URL in there for you guys on that. But first question from Nancy. Nancy asked a couple of really great questions. So the first one that she asked was, how can I learn to write better prompts and how to have consistent images like Bo? Do you have a video with Bo and they're moving and interacting with other characters in the videos? And I think this is a really great question to find out how to write better prompts.
Well, I will just say, for starters, it's a lot trial and error. And if you saw some of the questions that we were asking, that's why I kind of pasted the screenshots from Boodlebox. You could see the kinds of questions that we were asking. Some of the ones, especially the ones from me, they are not highly technical. And like, and then Chris was just like, show me a picture of this. So sometimes you can just give it a really, really basic prompt, especially in Boodle. It's going to be extremely forgiving. But Chris, you can probably talk more to the prompts and then how to get consistent images.
Yeah, I mean, right now, consistent image, like character generation, it really requires kind of an external tool, something like what we're showing you with either, really, I think, so I would tell you consistent character and video. The video question specifically, I have created a video with Bo. We may show that next time. And yes, you can create video with multiple characters interacting. There's a little more to it. It's still going to be a bit of, you can create the video, but there'll be no audio. You'll have to then layer in the audio. And so there's pieces and parts to this that are still there. Sora is doing amazing on consistent character, especially image to image. On the prompting part, I think we answered that a little bit by saying, like, especially inside of Boodle, you've got the Claude intro and then also the prompt bot. But I'll honestly tell you right now, one of the most powerful things you can do, pretend like the LLM, the large language model, the chat bot, whatever you want to call it, pretend like it is your resident geek, okay? If you don't understand, literally say, I don't understand. How can I write a better prompt? So last night, I will laughingly tell you, I was too tired. Some of the prompts I put in Boodlebox to create this content, I went to ChatGPT and I'm like, I need to prompt Perplexity about something for the church. And it goes, ask it for local church news and church trends. And I'm like, perfect. And that's what I went and did. So to some degree, just pretend you're talking to me. You can be like, I don't get it. And just have a conversation. It will feel odd and uncanny at first. And once you do it a couple times, you'll see that today, a year ago, not so true. You really need to do higher end prompting. But today, just say, and honestly, you know what? I write on code all the time. All right, that didn't work. That is not what I wanted. So you can literally say, that's not what I wanted. Please try again. Make sure you say please. That way, when the AI overlords take over, you're in their good graces. Okay, I'm kidding.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, I like this question from Nancy as well. She asked, has using AI affected your creativity level? How will this affect the creators who we do not purchase their images? I'm conflicted with this abandoning the creative community. So how, for each of you, how has using AI affected your creativity level? Let's go first.
I don't know if I was highly creative to begin with. Like, I've never been, I have always been that kind of person that can hack. Kevin Miller, you're on this webinar. I've always said, I don't necessarily generate my own stuff, but I'm just a really good hack. And so using AI has just allowed me to kind of continue to lean into that. Some other people work better from a blank page. I do not. So I don't feel like it's necessarily affected my creativity level. And in fact, I do find myself using parts of my brain that I didn't necessarily use before, in the sense that I'm trying to figure out how to do the best prompt right at the gate. And so, like, I don't know, I almost feel like AI is kind of teaching me how to ask better questions to get to the end goal of what I want faster, quicker, more efficiently. So I don't know, Patrick, do you have, well, I mean, you use Cody and stuff for developing. So, like, how does that impact what you do?
Yeah, I was actually going to jump in on that one. I actually think it's actually improved a little bit more, just because, well, one with Cody especially, I mentioned it earlier, it can do a lot of the things that is repetitious for me, so it's not really counting against, but it's letting me get to the more creative stuff and the more in-depth stuff faster. And I think Trace likes it a little bit more because, you know, she doesn't get black and white boxes like square, because I can be like, Cody, you know, make this cooler, because I admit I'm a developer. I can't design a website very well. So no artistic bones. I draw a great stick figure. So, but at the other hand, it lets me, I actually can include more art, images, more color into the things I design, because, you know, I'm very, what is it, left brain. So I have a hard time with images. So I can just ask, it's like, hey, what goes well with this? And I can actually bring it in. So it brings something I'm working in to be a little bit better than black and white boxes and stick figures. So
my wife, I'm not gonna answer the question directly. I'll say my wife would tell you that it has greatly enhanced my creativity, because she walked by about 6 months ago when I was talking to Trace on a web call out loud, and the detail with which I was requesting a specific image be created, with cinematic lighting and the dust and the sands of the arena. And she just walks in my office and she goes, okay, now that I know you can use all those words, fine is no longer an acceptable answer when I want to know how your day was. So a little bit tongue in cheek, but I believe it has enhanced the creative juices for sure.
Chris, do you have any thoughts
I
on the second part of her question? Because it's a really good question, as far as, like, you know, how might, like, not purchasing stuff that are, you know, actual human creators have made, like, how might that impact the creative community and stuff like that?
Are you wanting me to answer that?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay, okay.
Because I know you can use your words.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Thank you for the words. You know, I'm going to just be very honest with everybody. That is a source of contention across the entire space. So as we talk about, you know, color creation and even other things being copyright free, you know, I will tell everybody to share with you, I am on both sides of the fence right now. So I have friends who are lobbyists against some of the generative AI. And I'm friends with them because I want to know and understand their point of view. So it is a both and situation. So what I would say is, I think each person, each church, each organization has to navigate that. And what I want to say is, you're going to hear us talk a lot about collaborating with AI. And what I think is about to happen, Nancy, specifically, I think a moment is coming when those who can create will probably find this moment in the sun again, because they could create the backdrop or the character. Now, by the way, Bo was created by an artist. We did not create Bo with AI. Bo was crafted for us by an artist, but now we're taking Bo and we're using Bo in a plethora of ways. So again, I'm going to be the guy who continues to say, I think the future is deeper and deeper collaboration, not replacement. I think that the creative community is going to make a pivot as we move forward.
Okay, let's take a look here. We're having some questions come through the chat as well, and some are being put over into the Q&A, so I'm just trying to gather those up. So Bob asked a question earlier, how do you know which AI to use for different things, like job descriptions, writing articles, policies, etc.? ChatGPT, would you use Claude, Perplexity?
Flat out experience. Like any new tool chain, just get in there and play with it. Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, Llama, Grok, they're all text generation engines. So they will all do the same thing in slightly different ways. Trace seems to gravitate to Claude. I gravitate to ChatGPT. I don't like all the fluff. Claude's a little more fluffy. Pi is the fluffiest. And Perplexity is more research, and then like Ideogram, Flux, Sora, those are going to be image generators. So again, get in, play with the tools, and you'll discover which ones you like.
Chris, I think you said it best earlier too. It's all about personal preference a lot too. So.
And kind of like that one example I gave you as far as the image generation, I ended up, you know, pitting Ideogram and Flux against each other just to see which one came up with. And I've come to find that Flux will give me a little bit like it gives me more like I don't know. Ideogram it's what we actually use behind the, under the hood for color creation. Is that correct? So it does a really good job of generating the black and white, you know, outline type of thing that we need for coloring pages for kids. Whereas for me, Flux gives me a lot more of a robust image. So and again, it's just trial and error and playing with it. Or Google it. Ask AI which AI model to use for what you're trying to accomplish.
There is actually a bot for that inside of Boodle. You can actually ask it which bot to use, and it'll
Prompt
give you a
bot.
suggestion.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that, Patrick. Yeah. So Boodle does come with a tool where you can ask it which bot do I use for this.
Yep.
Perfect.
Cool.
Okay. Bill asked, have you tried Gemini's deep research? I've found it to be outstanding. It sounds similar to Perplexity. It gave me a listing of all of the websites it used to research and also included footnotes to the website it provided. Excuse me.
I have not personally used it yet, but the moment I saw your question on the screen, I've already written it down. So in a future episode, Bill, I can, I'll definitely check it out.
Perfect. I've had two questions come in regarding this. So how does one use these tools within Realm? Can these tools be used within Realm?
So that's a great question. What I'll tell you is no, not right now. So there is one generative AI solution in it. So about a year and a half ago, we rolled out that. So there is a feature where some of the longer text fields can use AI to autocomplete them and potentially change the tone, change the voice. But we'd have to get somebody from Realm to take a look at that. We as a company, ACS, are continuing to explore how we're going to integrate more and more of these AI tools into both Realm and Ministry platform. But right now, you know, I would say most of these tools are on the outside, but we do have some of the text capabilities already inside the platform.
Yeah, I do want to honor our time. We will stick around a little bit afterwards for what we lovingly call the after party. And we'll try to answer everything else that we missed during the actual presentation and recording. But I want to, as we wrap this up officially, I want to invite you guys back for our next AI in Ministry webinar, where we're going to be talking about person-to-person AI collaboration. So we may or may not be bringing in a friend of Chris's. We'll see if we can strong him in, but I'm sure he'll be fine with it. But we would just kind of want to talk about how us humans can collaborate together with AI tools and make it another really practical resource for you guys moving forward. So you should be able to use this QR code to register. And then Courtney also pasted the actual link in the chat for you guys. And with that, we're going to officially wrap up, kill the recording. And for those of you who want to stick around, we'll have an after party. And Courtney, I'm going to look at you to hit the non-record for